Captain Dae-ho Kim stared at the readings on his screen and felt his blood turn cold. The exploration ship Terra's Vengeance had been traveling for 6 months to reach Kepler 442b. This planet was supposed to be humanity's third major colony, world. 50,000 brave humans had left Earth 5 years ago to build a new home here. Instead, Kim was looking at a graveyard. "Captain, you need to see this," called Dr. Yuna Park from her station. The chief scientist's voice was shaking. "The scans are showing massive metal debris across the northern continent. It looks like our colony ships." Kim walked over to her workstation. The images made his stomach turn. Twisted metal was scattered across what should have been New Sol, the main human settlement. The colony ships had been melted and torn apart like paper toys. "Any life signs?" Kim asked, though he already knew the answer. Commander Tae-min Lee shook his head. "Nothing, sir. No human life signs anywhere on the planet. But there's something else. The readings are strange." Lieutenant Sora Choi looked up from her communications desk. "Captain, I'm picking up old distress signals. They're very weak, but they're definitely from our colonists. The last one was sent 3 years ago." Kim felt anger building in his chest. "Play it." The voice that came through the speakers was filled with terror. "This is Colony Leader Park Min-ho. Day 847 of the Siga. They're not trying to kill us quickly anymore. They're farming us. Taking people one by one, they use our bodies for energy, then grow these crystal things from our bones. Please, if anyone receives this, don't come here. Don't let them do this to you too." The bridge fell silent. Kim's hands were shaking with rage, but his voice stayed calm. "Take us down to the surface. I want to see everything." The landing party walked through what had once been the main street of New Sol. Buildings were still standing, but they were empty. Worse than empty. In the center of town they found them, 50,000 skeletons arranged in perfect rows. Each skeleton had strange glowing crystals growing from the bones. The crystals pulsed with a soft blue light. Dr. Park knelt next to one of the skeletons. "These crystals are some kind of energy storage system. They're still drawing power from the remains." She stood up quickly, looking sick. "Captain, whoever did this, they turned our people into living batteries." Kim walked between the rows of bones. Each skeleton had been a person with dreams and hopes. Men, women, children who had traveled across space to build something new. Now they were just fuel for alien machines. "Sir," called Taemin from near a large building. "I found their command center. The computers are still working." Inside the building, screens showed the final days of the colony. The videos were hard to watch. Large, crystal-like creatures had surrounded the settlement. They moved slowly but never stopped. When they caught humans, they didn't kill them right away. Instead, they put them in strange containers that kept them alive while slowly draining their life energy. "They're called the Velthari," Dr. Park said, reading from the colony's research files. "Silicon-based life forms. They need organic energy to survive, so they hunt other species. The colonists tried to fight them for 2 years." Kim watched a video of colonists trying to escape in small ships. The Velthari vessels were huge and moved like living things. They caught each escape attempt and brought the humans back to the farm. "Captain," Sora called out, "I'm detecting active Velthari signals. They're still here." Kim looked at the tactical display. 3 large ships were hidden behind the planet's largest moon. They had been there the whole time, probably checking. On their crystal farm. "They're treating this place like a garden," Taemin said with disgust. "They planted our people and now they're waiting for the crystals to grow bigger." Kim felt something break inside his chest. These aliens hadn't just killed 50,000 humans. They had turned them into a resource, like humans might harvest wheat or raise cattle. But these were people. Each crystal represented someone's mother, father, brother, sister. "Dr. Park, I want you to take samples of everything. I want to know exactly how this process works. I want to know everything about these Velthari." "Sir, what are you planning?" Kim looked out at the field of glowing skeletons. "I'm planning to make sure this never happens again." They spent 3 days documenting everything. The Velthari had been very thorough. They had records of each human they had processed. Names, ages, how much energy each person had provided. It was like reading a farmer's harvest report. The worst discovery came on the final day. In the basement of the colony's medical center, they found the nursery. 50 small skeletons, each no bigger than a human child. The crystals growing from these bones were different colors, brighter, more active. Dr. Park had tears in her eyes. The children's energy was more pure. The crystals are more efficient. Kim couldn't speak for several minutes. He just stared at the small bones with their glowing crystals. Somewhere in space, these creatures were probably proud of their efficient farming methods. "Sir," Taman said quietly, "the Velthari ships are moving. They're coming this way." Kim nodded. "Let them come. I want to look them in the eye." 3 massive ships landed near the colony. They were beautiful in a terrible way, made of the same crystal material that grew from human bones. Tall figures emerged. The Velthari looked like walking crystal formations, about 3 meters tall with multiple arms. One of them approached the human landing party. When it spoke, the words came through a translation device. "Small, organic. Beings, you should not be here. This is a cultivation zone. Leave now or join the harvest." Kim stepped forward. "I'm Captain Kim of the human colonial fleet. These were our people. You murdered them." The Velthari tilted its crystal head. "Murder? No. Cultivation. Your species makes excellent energy sources, very emotional, very alive until the end. We have been cultivating organic species for thousands of cycles. It is natural." "Natural?" Kim's voice was very quiet. "Yes. You consume plant life and lesser animals for energy. We consume thinking species. It is the same principle, just more efficient." Kim looked back at the field of human skeletons, then at his crew. Dr. Park was recording everything. Tae-min had his hand on his weapon. Sora was already transmitting everything back to Earth. "You're right," Kim said finally. "It is natural. Predators hunt prey, but you made one mistake." "What mistake?" Kim smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. "You assumed we were prey. The Velthari ships were powerful, but they had never fought anything that fought back intelligently. The Terra's Vengeance was a exploration ship, but it still had weapons. More importantly, it had humans who were now very, very angry. The battle was short. The Velthari were used to hunting farmers and families, not trained soldiers. When their ships were burning wreckage, on the ground, Kim stood over the dying Velthari leader. "This is just the beginning," he said. "We're going to find every last one of your kind, and then you'll learn what real predators can do." As the Terra's Vengeance left Kepler 442b, Sora was already sending messages to every human world in the galaxy. The message was simple. "They turned our people into crops. Mobilize everything. It's time for war." Behind them, 50,000 crystal monuments glowed in the darkness, waiting for justice. Admiral Jin Wuhan stood before the largest gathering of human military leaders in history. The Great Hall on Luna Station could hold 10,000 people, and every seat was filled. Representatives from every human colony, every fleet, every military unit had come to hear the response to Kepler 442. The images on the massive screen behind him showed the crystal-covered skeletons of 50,000 colonists. The room was completely silent. Everyone had seen the reports, but seeing it again made the rage fresh. "Ladies and gentlemen," Han began, his voice carrying across the hall. 6 months ago, we sent Captain Kim to check on our newest colony. What he found there changes everything." Han touched a control and new images appeared. Ships, thousands of them, floating in formation around Earth. Every nation on Earth has contributed to this fleet. Every colony world has sent their best. Ships and crews. We now have 10,000 combat vessels, and 2 million of our finest soldiers ready for war. A murmur ran through the crowd. Never before had humanity gathered such a massive military force. Dr. Hee Jin-yu stepped forward. She had been studying Velthari technology for months since Kim's discovery. "The Velthari are not just killers," she said. "They are farmers. For over 10,000 years, they have been harvesting intelligent species across the galaxy. We have found evidence of at least 40 other species that were completely wiped out and turned into energy crystals. Images of other dead worlds appeared on the screen. Planets covered in different colored crystals, each color representing a different extinct species. They have a simple pattern, Dr. Yu continued. They find a species that has just developed space travel. They study them for a few years. Then they attack when the species is spread across multiple worlds, but not yet strong enough to fight back effectively. They prefer species with strong emotions and active minds because these produce more energy when harvested. Major Kyung-Soo Nam, the leader of humanity's special forces, stood up. How many of them are there? Our best estimates put their population at around 50 billion individuals spread across 47 star systems. They have been very successful at this harvesting strategy. A voice from the audience called out, "What does the Galactic Council say about this?" Admiral Han's expression grew dark. The Galactic Council has offered to mediate a peace agreement. They suggest we negotiate compensation for our losses and establish boundaries so the Velthari won't hunt humans in the future. The room exploded in angry shouts. Someone yelled, "Compensation? They want to pay us for turning our children into batteries?" Han raised his hand for silence. The Council species are afraid. They have never seen anything like the Velthari, and they don't want to make them angry. Most galactic species fight very polite wars with rules and limits. They capture enemies. They avoid civilian targets. They negotiate when things get difficult. He paused and looked around the room. But we are not most galactic species. Captain Kim, now promoted to Admiral Kim, stepped forward. He had requested to lead the first attack force. "I have been studying human military history," he said. "When humans fight for survival, we don't follow anyone else's rules. We fight to win, completely and permanently." Dr. Yu activated another display. The Velthari have one major weakness. They are used to fighting species that surrender when the situation becomes hopeless. They have never fought a species that becomes more dangerous when cornered. Admiral Han nodded. "Today, we activate the Human Extinction Protocol. This is a military doctrine that has never been used before. It calls for the complete destruction of any species that threatens humanity's existence." The room fell silent again. The Human Extinction Protocol was something everyone had heard of but hoped would never be needed. "The goal is simple," Han continued. "Total species elimination. No negotiations, no prisoners, no mercy. The Velthari chose to treat us like animals, for slaughter. We will treat them like a disease to be cured." Major Nam stood again. "Sir, what about the other galactic species? They won't approve of this approach." "They don't have to approve," Han replied. "We are withdrawing from all galactic treaties and agreements. Any species that helps the Velthari will be considered an enemy of humanity. Any species that interferes with our operations will face consequences." A communication officer approached the podium. "Sir, we're receiving a message from the Velthari. They want to negotiate." Han smiled coldly. "Put it on the main screen." The image that appeared was of a tall, crystal creature standing in what looked like a command room. When it spoke, its voice was translated into perfect human language. "Human leaders, we understand you are upset about the Kepler incident. This was a misunderstanding. We did not realize your species had such strong emotional attachments to individual members. We are prepared to offer compensation and establish clear boundaries for future harvesting operations." The alien continued. "We can provide you with advanced technology in exchange for access to your less important population centers. Perhaps your criminals or elderly individuals who are no longer productive." The room exploded in fury. Chairs were thrown, people were shouting, and Admiral Han had to call for order several times. When the noise died down, Han looked directly into the camera transmitting back to the Velthari. "Let me make sure I understand your offer. You want to pay us to let you continue eating our people as long as you only eat the ones we don't care about." "Exactly," the Velthari replied. "We believe this arrangement will be beneficial for both species." Han was quiet for a long moment, then he began to laugh. It was not a pleasant sound. "You really don't understand what you've done, do you? We have followed standard protocol for species integration. Your reaction is more extreme than usual, but we are willing to adjust our terms." "Standard protocol," Han repeated. 40 species. Extinct, and you call it standard protocol? He leaned forward. Here's our counteroffer. Surrender completely, turn over all your technology, and accept execution. Those are the only terms we will consider. The Velthari was silent for several seconds. That is not acceptable. We are a superior species with advanced technology. You are just one young species among thousands. You cannot threaten us. Admiral Kim stepped into view of the camera. We already destroyed 3 of your ships. How superior did they feel when they were burning? That was one small harvest fleet. We have thousands of ships and billions of soldiers. If you continue this aggressive behavior, we will add humanity to our harvest list permanently. Han looked around the room at thousands of human military leaders. Every face showed the same expression: cold, deadly determination. You already added us to your harvest list, Han said quietly. You just didn't do your research very well. He paused. Let me educate you about human history. We are a species that survived by being better predators than everything else on our planet. We hunted the predators that hunted us until they were extinct. We are very good at making things extinct. The Velthari seemed confused. You are an organic species. You are limited by biology, by emotions, by inefficient decision-making processes. Yes, Han agreed. We are emotional. Right now, we are feeling an emotion called rage. It makes us very focused and very creative. He gestured to the ships visible through the station's windows. This fleet represents the largest military force ever assembled by any species in galactic history. Every ship is crewed by humans who have seen what you did to our colonists. Admiral Kim added, We studied your tactics. You attack weak civilian targets. You avoid any fight where you might take casualties. You have never fought a military force that was prepared for you. The Velthari's crystal body seemed to pulse with light. We will defend ourselves. We have technology beyond your understanding. Han nodded. I'm sure you do. But technology doesn't win wars. Will wins wars. And right now, no species in the galaxy wants your destruction more than we do. The transmission ended. The Velthari had disconnected. Admiral Han turned back to the assembly. Fleet commanders, you have your orders. Find them, follow them, and finish them. No Velthari ship escapes. No Velthari world survives. We end this species permanently. As the meeting broke up, officers began rushing to their ships. The largest military operation in human history was about to begin. Dr. Yu approached Admiral Han as he prepared to leave. Sir, the other galactic species are sending messages. They're concerned about our disproportionate response. Han looked out at the fleet of human warships preparing to leave the solar system. Tell them we appreciate their concern. Also tell them that any species found helping the Velthari will discover exactly how disproportionate our response can be. Within hours, the fleet was moving. 10,000 ships carrying 2 million soldiers, all focused on a single goal, the Itao, complete extinction of the species that had dared to farm humanity. The hunt had begun. General Sang Ho Kang watched through his command ship's view screen as the first Velthari world burned. The planet Zerion 7 had been home to 3 billion crystal beings. Now it was a glowing ball of molten rock. Resonance bombs are working perfectly, sir, reported engineer Wanshik Zhang. The frequency disruption completely shatters their crystal-based biology. They can't defend against it because their entire body structure depends on harmonic vibrations. Captain Yunbi Shin's voice came through the communication system from her bomber squadron. All targets destroyed, General. No survivors detected. Moving to secondary objectives. This was the 15th Velthari world to die in 3 months. The human war machine was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Jin Yu had spent those 3 months developing weapons specifically designed to kill silicon-based life forms. Where other species fought with energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, humans had created molecular disruptors, harmonic resonance bombs, and thermal weapons that could melt crystal structures at the atomic level. The Velthari still don't understand what they're fighting, General Kang said to his staff. They keep trying to use their standard tactics, surround the enemy, cut off supply lines, Forced surrender through attrition. Commander Tae-Min Lee, now promoted to full colonel, nodded grimly. They've never fought an enemy that gets stronger when you hurt it. Every world they destroyed makes us fight harder. The tactical display showed human fleets spread across 17 star systems. Unlike the Velthari, who moved slowly and methodically, human forces struck fast and unpredictably. They would appear in a system, destroy everything they found, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Velthari Central Command." "Put it through." The crystal being that appeared on screen was larger than the others they had seen, with more complex patterns in its body structure. When it spoke, its voice carried undertones of something that might have been desperation. "Human commanders, your actions are destroying the natural order of the galaxy. We have been successful cultivators for thousands of years. Your species' response is beyond all reasonable proportions." General Kang leaned back in his command chair. "Reasonable proportions? You turned 50,000 of our people into living batteries, including children. What would you consider a reasonable response to that?" "Standard protocol would be a formal complaint to the Galactic Council, followed by negotiated compensation. Perhaps the establishment of protected zones where your species would be safe from future cultivation." "I see. And what compensation would you offer for 50,000 murdered humans?" The Velthari paused, apparently calculating. "Based on standard galactic protocols, we could provide technological upgrades worth approximately 10 million energy units, plus guaranteed protection for your primary worlds." Kang looked around his command center. Every human officer was staring at the screen with expressions of barely controlled rage. 10 million energy units, Kang repeated slowly, "for 50,000 human lives. That works out to about 200 units per person. That is a generous offer based on standard rates. Most species accept far less compensation for cultivation. Losses." Captain Shin's voice cut into the conversation from her fighter craft. "General, are we really listening to this thing negotiate prices for our families?" Kang held up a hand for silence, but his eyes never left the Velthari representative. "Tell me something. In all your thousands of years of cultivation, has any species ever refused your compensation offers?" "A few have initially resisted, but they always accept reasonable terms once they understand the futility of military action against us." "I see. And how many species have you completely wiped out?" The Velthari's crystal body flickered. 42 species have been fully processed for cultivation. This is normal population management. Weaker species are replaced by stronger ones. It is natural selection on a galactic scale." Kang nodded slowly. "Natural selection. That's an interesting way to put it." He stood up from his chair. "Let me tell you about natural selection from a human perspective." The view screen split to show images from the recent battles. Velthari ships being torn apart by human weapons, crystal beings dissolving under molecular disruptors, entire worlds being reduced to slag by resonance bombs. "You see, you made one critical error in your calculations," Kang continued. "You assumed that because we were a young species, we were weak. But humans aren't strong because we're old. We're strong because we had to be." Dr. Yu stepped into view of the camera. "We did some research on your previous victims. They were all peaceful species. Farmers, artists, philosophers. They had never fought a real war before you arrived." "Peaceful species are more efficient energy sources," the Velthari explained. "Aggressive species are too difficult to process safely." "Exactly," Kang said with a cold smile. "You've spent thousands of years hunting sheep. Now you're trying to hunt wolves." Engineer Zhang activated another display. "We've been studying your technology. Very impressive energy collection systems, advanced crystalline computers, beautiful ship designs, all built by a species that never had to fight for survival." The Velthari representative seemed to understand where this was going. "You are suggesting that our technological superiority is irrelevant?" "Not irrelevant," Kang replied. "Just useless against an enemy that specializes in killing things that are supposed to be unkillable." Colonel Lee added, "We fought predators on our homeworld that were bigger, stronger, and better armed than us. We won by being smarter, more adaptable, and more vicious than anything else on the planet. Captain Shin's squadron appeared on the tactical display, moving toward another Velthari world. General, we've got visual on Zerion 12. Population appears to be about 5 billion. Ready to begin bombardment. The Velthari on the screen made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret. Wait, we can negotiate new terms. We can offer exclusive technology transfers, territorial concessions, even a small number of our own population for your research purposes. Kang looked thoughtful. You'd sacrifice your own people to save yourselves? It would be a small price to pay for species survival. A few hundred individuals in exchange for peace. Interesting offer. Let me counter-propose. Kang's expression hardened. Complete surrender. All Velthari technology turned over to human forces. All Velthari individuals to report to human processing centers for execution. All Velthari worlds to be evacuated and prepared for human colonization. That is not negotiation. That is extermination. Yes, Kang agreed. It is. You exterminated 42 species, and you tried to exterminate us. Now we're exterminating you. As you said, it's natural selection. The Velthari's crystal body was pulsing rapidly now. This is not how galactic civilization works. There are rules, protocols, established procedures for resolving conflicts. Dr. Yu laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Those rules were written by species that never had to fight for their lives. They don't apply to us. But the other galactic species will not allow this. They will intervene. Kang nodded. Some of them have tried. 3 species have sent diplomatic missions demanding we cease military operations. We explained to them that any species interfering with our war effort would be treated as enemies of humanity. And their response? They stopped interfering. Engineer, Zhang brought up new tactical displays. Sir, we've identified the locations of 31 additional Velthari worlds. Fleet Admiral Kim's task force is moving to intercept their evacuation convoys. The Velthari representative was silent for a long moment. When it finally spoke, its voice had changed. You are not just destroying us. You are terrifying the entire galaxy. Other species are starting to see humans as the greatest threat to galactic peace. Good, Kang replied. Fear will keep them from making the same mistake you made. What mistake? Thinking that humans are prey. Captain Shin's voice crackled through the communication system. Bombardment complete, General. Zerion 12 is gone. No survivors detected. Moving to the next target. The Velthari on the screen seemed to collapse in on itself. Please. We can coexist. We can change our ways. We can become a peaceful species. General Kang studied the crystal being for a moment. You know what the really sad part is? If you had approached us peacefully 5 years ago, we probably would have been friends. Humans are actually very good at getting along with different species. Then why won't you accept peace now? Because you didn't approach us peacefully. You turned our children into farm animals. Kang's voice dropped to a whisper. And that is something we will never, ever forgive. The transmission ended. Colonel. Lee looked at the tactical display showing human fleets moving toward their next targets. Sir, at current pace we'll eliminate their entire species within 18 months. Too slow, General Kang replied. Send word to Admiral Han. I want more ships, more weapons, and more soldiers. I want the Velthari to know that when you make humans angry, we don't just win the war. What do we do, sir? Kang looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, the last members of a species were running in terror from human hunters. We make sure no one ever forgets what happens when you try to farm humanity. The war machine rolled on, and the galaxy trembled. Admiral Jin Wuhan stood in the command center of the massive battleship Final Answer, watching as the last organized Velthari fleet was systematically destroyed. 18 months of war had reduced the crystal beings from 50 billion individuals to fewer than 500 million, scattered across a dozen hidden worlds. Psychological warfare is working perfectly, sir, reported Colonel Mi-Young Seo from her station. We've been broadcasting the death screams of their commanders across all their communication networks. Their hive mind coordination has completely broken down. Dr. Jae-hun Oh approached with his latest report. The nanobots are exceeding expectations. Admiral, the silicon-eating strain we released on Zerion Prime consumed the entire planetary surface down to 3 meters depth. Any Velthari hiding underground were dissolved from the inside out. Captain In-ho Bay's voice came through the communication system from his deep strike fleet. Admiral, we've located another refugee convoy. 200 ships trying to reach the Andromeda Galaxy. Should we pursue? Pursue and destroy, Han replied without hesitation. No Velthari escapes, not one. The tactical display showed the scope of human operations across the galaxy. What had started as a military campaign had become something else entirely, a systematic extermination program that shocked even humanity's allies. Sir, called the communications officer, we're receiving urgent messages from the Galactic Council. They're threatening economic sanctions if we don't cease military operations immediately. Han turned to study the messages. Representatives from 12 different species were demanding that humanity stop its excessive response to the Velthari situation. Excessive response, Han read aloud. They consider the complete extinction of a species that murdered 50,000 humans to be excessive. Colonel Seo looked up from her psychological warfare station. The Altarians are offering to mediate a ceasefire. They claim the Velthari have learned their lesson and won't target human settlements again. Have they learned their lesson, Dr. O? Han asked. Dr. O consulted his research files. Based on intercepted communications, the surviving Velthari are planning to rebuild their civilization in the Outer Rim galaxies, then return in a few hundred years with better weapons and tactics to finish harvesting humanity. There's our answer. Han activated the fleet-wide communication system. This is Admiral Han to all human forces. The Galactic Council is threatening sanctions against humanity unless we allow the Velthari survivors to escape. Our response is simple. Any species that provides aid, comfort, or sanctuary to Velthari forces will be considered enemies of humanity. The effect was immediate. 3 species that had been secretly helping Velthari refugees quickly expelled them from their territory. 2 others sent messages promising full cooperation with human forces. Captain Bay's fleet had caught up with the fleeing Velthari convoy. Admiral, they're trying to surrender. They're offering to trade their advanced crystal technology for safe passage to uninhabited systems. Han considered this for a moment. What's our policy on Velthari prisoners, Dr. O? We don't take prisoners, sir. Every captured Velthari has been processed through the nanobotic dissolution chambers. It's the most efficient method. Captain, Bay, you have your orders, no survivors. The refugee convoy died in the darkness between stars. 200 ships carrying the last Velthari children and elderly were reduced to glowing dust by human weapons. Colonel Seo received an urgent transmission. Sir, the hegemony species are formally protesting our methods. They say we're committing genocide. Han laughed. Genocide? The Velthari committed genocide against 42 species over thousands of years. We're committing extinction. There's a difference. What's the difference, sir? Genocide is killing most of a population to send a message. Extinction is killing all of a population to end a threat permanently. Dr. O activated his biological warfare display. Admiral, the latest nanobotic strain is ready for deployment. This version specifically targets the quantum crystalline structures that Velthari use for consciousness storage. It will dissolve their minds before destroying their bodies. How long will they suffer? Approximately 14 minutes of complete sensory overload before neural collapse. They'll experience every pain sensation their species is capable of feeling, amplified by a factor of 10. Han nodded approvingly. Deploy it on all remaining Velthari worlds. I want them to understand exactly what 50,000 humans felt while being slowly drained of life. The war had changed humanity as well. The species that had once prided itself on diplomacy and cooperation had become something else, a force of absolute retribution that terrified the galaxy. Sir, reported the tactical officer, long-range scouts have located what appears to be The Velthari homeworld. It's hidden in the Veil Nebula, heavily defended, population estimated at 10 million individuals. Captain Bay's voice crackled with excitement. Admiral, request permission to take my strike force after them. Denied, Captain. The homeworld is mine. Han studied the tactical data on the Velthari homeworld. It was a massive crystal formation, more like a living machine than a planet. Billions of years of evolution had created a world that was perfectly adapted to silicon-based life. Dr. O, can we use the planet killer weapon on a crystalline world? The resonance cascade bomb. Absolutely, sir. In fact, a crystalline planet would amplify the effect. Instead of just destroying the surface, it would shatter the entire planetary structure down to the core. Han smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Excellent, but I want to talk to them first. The final answer and its escort fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Veil Nebula. The Velthari homeworld was immediately visible, a glowing crystal sphere surrounded by defensive satellites and patrol ships. Open a communication channel to their planetary command, Han ordered. The crystal being that appeared on screen was different from the others, ancient, complex, with thousands of smaller crystal growths covering its body. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons. I am the prime cultivator of the Velthari. You are Admiral Han of the human species. We have been expecting you. Have you? And what do you expect from this meeting? We expect to die. Your species has made that quite clear. We simply wish to understand why you have chosen to destroy us so completely. Han leaned forward. You really don't understand, do you? Even now, after 18 months of war, you don't comprehend what you did wrong. We followed our natural biological imperatives. We cultivated organic species for energy, as we have done for millennia. Your species responded with unprecedented violence. We responded with justice. The prime cultivator's crystal body pulsed with confusion. Justice? We offered fair compensation according to galactic standards. We were willing to exempt your species from future cultivation in exchange for reasonable payments. Han stood up from his command chair. You offered to pay us money to let you continue eating our people. You thought human lives were a commodity to be bought and sold. All organic life is commodity. It grows, it produces energy, it dies. This is the natural order. No, Han said quietly. This is your order, and your order ends today. Dr. O stepped into view of the camera. Prime Cultivator, we've done extensive research on your species. Do you know how many intelligent civilizations existed in this galaxy before you began your cultivation program? Approximately 2,000 species achieved spaceflight capabilities over the past 10,000 years. And how many still exist? The Prime Cultivator was silent. 43 species exist today, Dr. O continued. 42 were completely harvested by your people. One survived long enough to harvest you back. We did not know that other species would consider cultivation to be morally wrong. Admiral Han's expression grew cold. You didn't care. You never asked any of those species for permission. You never considered that they might have the same right to exist that you claim for yourselves. We are a superior species. We have the right to manage inferior species for the greater good of galactic evolution. Superior? Han laughed. You've spent thousands of years hunting helpless civilians. When you finally met a species that could fight back, we destroyed you in 18 months. How superior does that make you? Colonel Seo activated the psychological warfare systems. Across the Velthari homeworld, every communication device began broadcasting the recorded death screams of the species they had exterminated. 42 different voices, crying out in languages that would never be spoken again. The Prime Cultivator's crystal body began flickering rapidly. Stop this. This is cruelty beyond necessity. This is education, Han replied. These are the voices of your victims. They deserve to be heard. We can change. We can become a peaceful species. We can dedicate ourselves to preserving life instead of harvesting it. Too late for that. You had 10,000 years to become peaceful. You chose to become monsters instead. Captain Bay's voice came through the communication system. Admiral, all human fleets are in position. We have the homeworld completely surrounded. Han looked at the tactical display. 100,000. Human ships had emerged from hyperspace around the Velthari homeworld. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Prime Cultivator, I want you to understand something. Fleet Admiral Daeho Kim stood on the bridge of humanity's vengeance, watching the final Velthari stronghold through the view screen. The hidden moon base in the outer rim contained the last 10 million members of a species that had once numbered 50 billion. Dr. Una Park, now Director of Xenocide Operations, stood beside him with her final report. All other Velthari populations have been eliminated, Admiral. This is the last concentration of their species in the known universe. General Hyunwoo Lim was preparing his ground forces for the final assault. Sir, they've sent 17 different surrender offers in the past hour. They're promising complete submission, technology transfers, even voluntary slavery for the survivors. Kim looked at the messages scrolling across his tactical display, the desperate pleas from a dying species that finally understood what they were facing. What's their latest offer? Kim asked. Complete technological database transfer, including their consciousness preservation techniques and energy cultivation methods. They're also offering to serve as living computers for human research projects. War correspondent Sujin An was documenting everything from her position on the command deck. Her job was to record the final moments of the Velthari species for historical archives. Admiral, she said, for the historical record, what is humanity's official response to their surrender offers? Kim turned to face her camera. The same response we gave them when they first contacted us after Kepler 442b. We don't negotiate with species that farm sentient beings. The tactical display showed the Velthari moon base in detail. It was a beautiful structure, grown rather than built, with crystalline spires reaching up from the surface like frozen music. 10 million crystal beings lived inside, representing thousands of years of accumulated knowledge and culture. Sir, called the communications officer. The base. Commander wants to speak with you personally. She says she has information about other hostile species that might threaten humanity. Put her through. The Velthari that appeared on screen was smaller than the others Kim had seen, with more delicate crystal formations and patterns of light. That seemed almost artistic. When she spoke, her voice was different too, more melodic, less mechanical. I am Cultivation Director Velthara Prime. I have commanded this facility for 800 of your years. I wish to make a personal appeal for the survival of our species. Kim studied her carefully. Go ahead. We know we cannot fight you. Your species has proven to be far more dangerous than we ever imagined. But we can be useful to you alive. We have knowledge of 47 hostile species that could threaten human expansion. We have technology that could advance your civilization by thousands of years. Dr. Park stepped forward. What kind of hostile species? The devourers of the Magellanic Cloud. They consume entire star systems, not just individual species. The hive minds of Andromeda, who turn other species into slave drones. The machine collective that converts organic worlds into computing matrices. Kim listened carefully. And you didn't think to warn the galaxy about these threats before? We saw them as potential competition for cultivation resources. We planned to deal with them eventually. After you finished eating everyone else, Velthara Prime's crystal body flickered. Yes, we understand now that this was wrong. We can see that our cultivation practices were essentially genocide. We want to make amends. General Lim looked up from his assault preparations. Admiral, it would take us 6 months to extract all their technological databases. There might be some value in keeping a few of them alive for research purposes. Kim considered this. The Velthari did have advanced technology that could benefit humanity. Their consciousness preservation techniques alone could revolutionize human medicine. Director Velthara, if we were to spare some of your people, what guarantee do we have that they won't try to rebuild your civilization and return to cultivation practices? You could modify our base programming, remove our biological need for organic energy, We could survive on stellar radiation or artificial power sources. Sujin An was recording everything. Admiral, the galactic community would view mercy toward the Velthari survivors as a sign that humanity can be reasoned with. It might help our diplomatic relations. Kim walked to the view screen and stared at the crystal moon base. Inside that structure were 10 million individuals who had never personally participated in the cultivation of humans. Many of them were young by Velthari standards, born after the war had already begun. Dr. Park, what's your professional opinion? Could we safely modify their biology to eliminate their cultivation needs? Dr. Park consulted her research files. It's theoretically possible. We could use their own nanobotic technology to restructure their energy absorption systems. But there would always be a risk that they could reverse the modifications. And if they did reverse them, they would need to resume cultivation practices to survive. They would become a threat to other species again. Kim was quiet for several minutes, weighing the decision that would determine the fate of the last Velthari. Finally, he activated the communication system again. Director Velthara, I want you to understand something about human nature. When we feel threatened, we don't take chances. We eliminate threats completely and permanently. I understand. But surely there is some way. Kim held up his hand for silence. Let me finish. You're asking us to trust a species that spent 10,000 years murdering entire civilizations. You're asking us to believe that you've fundamentally changed your nature in the span of 24 months. We have learned. We have evolved. We can be different. Maybe you have. Maybe you're sincere. Maybe you really would become a peaceful species if we gave you the chance. Kim paused. But maybe is not good enough when the survival of other species is at stake. Dr. Park activated her xenocide protocols. Admiral, the planetary dissolution system is ready for deployment. We can eliminate the entire moon base in approximately 14 minutes. Belthera Prime's image flickered with what might have been panic. Wait, please. What if we accepted permanent exile? We could travel to the void between galaxies. We would never contact another organic species again. How would we verify that? How would we know you weren't just waiting for humanity to forget about you before returning? We could accept monitoring, permanent human observation stations. Any violation of exile terms would result in immediate execution. General Lim looked up from his tactical display. Sir, that would require maintaining a significant military presence in deep space indefinitely. The cost would be enormous. Kim nodded. And what happens when those monitoring stations fail? When equipment breaks down? When crews are rotated? When humanity gets distracted by other threats? You would still be out there waiting. Sujin An stopped recording for a moment. Admiral, are you really going to extinct an entire species that's trying to surrender? Kim looked at her directly. Sujin, I want you to record my words exactly. The Velthari had 10,000 years to choose peace. They chose genocide instead. They had multiple opportunities to negotiate with their victims. They chose farming instead. They had the chance to leave humanity alone after our first victory. They chose to plan our eventual cultivation instead. He turned back to the view screen. Director Velthara, your species made its choice long ago. You chose to be predators. Now you face the consequences of that choice. But we can change. We can be better. So could the 42 species you exterminated. They'll never get that chance because of you. Kim activated the final attack sequence. 100,000 human ships began moving toward the moon base, weapons charging for the last battle of the Velthari War. Admiral, Velthera Prime said desperately, what about mercy? What about forgiveness? Are these not human virtues? Kim was quiet for a long moment. Yes, they are human virtues. We show mercy to species that make mistakes. We forgive species that harm us accidentally or out of ignorance. His voice hardened. But you didn't make a mistake. You built an entire civilization on systematic murder. That is not something we forgive. The first human weapons reached the moon base. Energy shields flared and died under the assault. Crystal spires began to crack and fall. Please. Velthara Prime's image was breaking up as her communication systems failed. Remember us as we were at the end. Remember that we tried to change. I'll remember you exactly as you were, Kim replied. A species that learned too late that not everyone is prey. The moon base died beautifully, its crystal structures creating prismatic light shows as they shattered. 10 million Velthari perished in minutes, their consciousness patterns dissolving as their physical forms were destroyed. When the light faded, nothing remained but glowing debris and the silence of extinction. Sujin An finished her recording. Admiral, that was the last of them. The Velthari species is now completely extinct. Kim looked at the debris field that had been the final Velthari stronghold. Dr. Park, confirm total species elimination. Confirmed, sir. DNA scans show no surviving Velthari genetic material in the known galaxy. The species is biologically extinct. General Lim began demobilizing his forces. Sir, what are your orders for the fleet? Kim considered the question. Humanity now commanded the largest military force in galactic history, having just demonstrated